Today is everything George Washington. Did you know that he didn't have wooden teeth? But we're going to talk about that and all the other fun facts about old George, but also we're going to be making his favorite breakfast, Hoecakes. Hey, thank y'all for stopping by at the wagon with me today. And what are we talking about? The history of the hoe cake. Yeah, we're going way back. I mean, way back. You know, hoe cake really originated in 1746 is where we first started hearing about it. And people in the South say, no, it come from the South. Nope. Come from up there in the New England states. And it was a favorite of George Washington. And we'll get into that a little more in a minute. But the hoe cake, when it was adopted by the Southern people, was called the Johnny cake. This is really just a cornmeal base. Usually up there in the New England area, it was a white cornmeal, where down in the South, a lot of times it was a yellow cornmeal. When this was cooked back in George Washington's time, some people even called them a griddle cake because they was cooked on a big hot piece of flat iron. But out there, a lot of people too would cook them on the bottom of a hoe, sort of like when we did the corn dodger video. Go back and watch John Wayne's corn dodger video to where we actually cooked them on a shovel. But they would cook these on the flat part of the hoe. Just get it in the coals, get it hot, rub a little bit of that beef suet on there, put a little batter on there. Now we're talking about George Washington's favorite breakfast here, so we're gonna make it traditionally how they would have made it there in that kitchen about 4 o'clock in the morning. And we're gonna start with what? About a cup of warm water. And I would say about a half a package of this yeast, which is about that much. Give it just a little bit of stir. Then we're gonna add cornmeal, white cornmeal, because remember, we're staying traditional to the era up there we are. Mix this all up. And when they would get this made, they would just cover it with a cup towel early in the morning or the night before and set it over there on the hearth by the fireplace where it would just stay warm and just sit there. And they're gonna let it set sometimes 4 hours to overnight, whenever you got ready to use it, but it needs to set at least 4 hours, it does. Not only are we gonna do the traditional George Washington breakfast way, but we're gonna do the Southern way, the way that I know that they're being fixed today, and that is with self-rising flour, a little baking powder, salt, sugar, eggs, buttermilk, which we didn't have any in that, no yeast, and we're going to make it a little sweeter at the end because we're going to put a fruit compote in it. So don't leave me yet, because we're going to have a taste test at the end to see which one I prefer and which one I think George would prefer. Due to the magic of TV, we done made a batch up and let it set overnight. We did. It smells more like bread to me than it does cornmeal, so we're going to stir this up just a little. We have got 1 beaten egg here, we do. And then we're going to add about 1 1/4 cups of cornmeal again. And then we're going to mix this to what I'd call really to it like a thick pancake batter. So we're just going to add some warm water to it. So we're going to add about a teaspoon of salt. The yeast is going to help it sort of the fermentation process start to where you're going to get a little more rise out of this, because remember, this method has no baking powder in it, so there's no leavening that's going to make it jump up there to the top. So I would say we were pretty close. Old Kent did a pretty good job of measuring there, and then we're just going to let it set for about 15 minutes. So I think we need to talk about George. You know, when George was about 19 or 20 years old and he joined up in the Army, that's when really his bad teeth started coming into play. Now, you're talking about being out there in the Army in really rough conditions. The Revolutionary War started and we didn't have no toothbrush. A lot of times it's soft wheel or stick that maybe had been chewed on the end, and then you just sort of try to just brush your teeth with it. Maybe a little baking soda, something like that. Even known that some people mixed a little charcoal with stuff to where they could have a little grit to clean it. But George started losing a tooth a year due to some bad decay going on in there. When he was 57 years old, George didn't have but 1 tooth left and he wanted to save it. So he had went to dentists before to see what they could do to save his mouth, because it was very uncomfortable for him to try to eat. So contrary to popular belief, old George didn't have no wooden teeth. He got this French doctor that he knew that was a dentist there, and he said, "George, I can make you some dentures." Now, who ever heard of dentures back in that time? I didn't even know they existed. So this guy come in there and he went to try to form something to fit in George's mouth, and George said, "We got to save that 1 tooth." So they cut a hole in the denture plate to where the one could stick through. So there was 1 human tooth in there that was George's, it was. The base was made out of lead. And then what was the top made out of? Horse teeth and mule teeth. The bottom, cow's teeth and some human teeth. there was a spring that fit in the back of these dentures that would let him close his mouth, but it would help pop it open. A lot of times it'd hang and he'd have to sort of click his mouth to get them dentures to come open. But can you imagine wearing this contraption? A lot of times George said, hey, these ain't even comfortable. I need to eat something that I can that is soft. You know, George loved to drown them in butter and syrup and get them a little soft, and I want to try that method to see what the texture is and the taste. But folks, I also want to do them Johnny cakes from down south, see which one I like best and try to convince George that's the one I want. Let's move on to the more modern Johnny cake version that's made down there in the south, and a lot of people still make it today. Whole lot quicker. About 1.5 cups of self-rising flour, about 1.5 cups of yellow cornmeal, because remember George's was white, we're going to go yellow here. 3 large cackleberries. Don't do this in the house, but Maid said we could do it out here. We're going to add some sugar to sweeten up the taste, just a tad we are. Some buttermilk. We're going to steal this whisk out of here, and we're going to get a hold of them eggs first over here in this corner and get them beat up. You can see this is a little dry right here, so we're going to go ahead and add some more water because we're still looking for that sort of thick pancake batter is what we're after, and 1/4 cup of melted butter. You know, when George finished his presidency and moved over there to Mount Vernon, for some 40-odd years there, him and Martha had over 1,000 guests that would come and visit. This was the breakfast that he requested that everyone get to eat. I'm going to change this up a little, and I'm going to take some peaches that we have picked. I'm going to dice them up, put them in a little bowl. I'm going to add about 1 cap full of almond extract, and I'd say about maybe 1/4 cup of rum, because this was the preferred drink back in George's time, was rum. Put some sugar in there, stir it all up. We're going to let it set a little while so all them flavors get together. I'm going to top these with that. We'll leave George's with just butter and syrup. Now, when it come time to actually be cooking these for breakfast, which was most time around 4 o'clock in the morning when he was in the White House, but later than that when he was at Mount Vernon, they would cook them on a flat griddle. Now, we're going to cook them in a cast iron skillet. We're going to preheat it just a little to where we know it's hot. We're going to add just a little bit of oil to it because we want to make sure nothing sticks there. They would have been using some beef fat or something like that, or hog fat. So you get to see how level your kitchen is when you do that. So we're going to see if we can't level it up even a little bit more here. We're going to have to put a shim right there. So we are pretty close, we are. Now, get you a spoonful, and we're going to see how big these are because we need them to sort of resemble a pancake. We're just going to dip that in there, give them a little flattening. I'm thinking that's going to be about the right size. We'll put one right over here on this side. We'll pull up a chair and wait for George to show up, and we'll eat together here in a minute. You're going to cook these just like a pancake. You're going to begin to see them brown around the edges everywhere. We're going to swivel that around here to where we can tilt this skillet. I hope whoever was cooking George's Hoecakes had a more leveler spot than I did. But you want to get these good and brown on the bottom before you even attempt to turn them over, because if you don't, they're going to try to fall apart. George's dad died when he was around 11 years old, and that's when George had to quit schooling. And he felt bad really the rest of his entire life because he didn't get to further his education. And his mother taught him how to be a tobacco farmer, but really his first job came as he was a surveyor. George was an animal lover, but also George loved a lot of mules, he did, and his stock that he bred up helped power the South for many generations. But he was also loved him some hunting dogs, and he had all kinds of hunting dogs he did. Now, George and Martha had no biological children. Martha had 2 from a previous marriage when she married in with George, but they had no biological children of their own. Now, we all know how tough George was, but he was really hard to kill. He suffered from diphtheria, tuberculosis, smallpox, malaria, dysentery, pneumonia, and he almost drowned. But what actually killed George was a bad cold. Now folks, it was sort of a bacteria infection too that got in his throat, which could have been cured today with modern antibiotics, but that did old George in, it did. But he requested when he was so sick and knew that time was coming, don't bury me till 3 days after I'm dead, because he had such a fear of being buried alive. George died in 1799 at 67 years old. Well, we've cooked George's style. Let's cook the more modern style. Grease back in the skillet. We're going to cook them actually just the same way. You make sure you got you a little grease in there when you start. We're going to put about 3 in here and hope we can get them all flipped here in a minute. That needs to be just a little bigger. I think we're in pretty good shape. Do you like cornbread? Beegwood doesn't have that eat.
No, Duker.
Duker, hey, Let's see what happens. Ready?
Yep. Ooh. The yellow just looks better.
Yeah, it does. And to me, when you're cooking these, I've turned a lot of pancakes on ranches. This holds up a little better, and it's got that grit in it, which actually helps it really slide good on a well-seasoned skillet. Well, cooking both of them was really just the same method it was, but cooking these really to me is easier than cooking like regular pancakes, because they're stay together a little better, but also they got a little of that grit in them to where they slide around on that cast iron. But I'm going to taste the cake itself out of each one of these first before we ever get into anything else. So I'm going to cut the edge off this one. This is George's version. To me, there is a little bit of a mixture there, like we've made sourdough cornbread. This to me is got that taste just a little bit.
Got kind of like a tang to it?
Yeah, I'm really liking it though, I am. So we'll go over here to the more modern version. These pancakes, the more up-to-date version, to me aren't as light and fluffy as these Hoecakes that got to set overnight. So I'm gonna do as George would do. I'm gonna rake these little holes in there, and I am gonna drown it in butter because that's what he liked it. And then we're gonna add a little more syrup to it. We're gonna get us a bite of this. Oh my God. Oh man.
Can you do the cherry tree dance?
Yeah. We're gonna do the cherry tree chopping dance. Get over here and get us a little of this cherry wood. There we go, we're in good shape. I really like that, I do, but I didn't get the fruit and the rum here, and you can see all that juice that's over here on the side, so this might change my opinion here. Get me a peach right up here. If I had me a little whipped cream put on top of that, or some ice cream, I would call that dessert right there. After I've tasted them both, and just based on flavor of the Hoecake itself, the winner would be old George Washington's version for me, it would. I mean, there's a lot of flavor that you just get when you take that bite of it. I could eat them, put them in your pocket, take them with you all day long. We got any pups? Oh, how about, here, we'll give y'all some of George's version. He loved pups. I don't know where Duke is. I think he quit us by now. Lou? I still miss the Beagadoo, Lou. He would have already had most of this eat up before y'all got it. Little Mage? Duker? Tucker, come on. You're late. We're paying you way too much for you to be taking this long to get here. No, oh my gosh. Loose as I'll have it. Well, we thank y'all so much for watching this. We got a little history and we got a little food, and that's what we really like to do. But it is with pride, honor, and privilege that I tip my hat to all the servicemen and women and all the veterans that have been keeping that old flag flying up there. We commend you all, we do. Rest of y'all, hey, we just thank y'all so much for always letting us into your house, your living room, your car, you pick up your cell phone, whatever you got. Y'all are truly family to me and Shan. Get on in here, I'm gonna give you a big old hug. Come on. God bless you each and every one, and I'll see you down the George Washington Hoecake Trail. Hey, whoa, wait a minute. Hey, what did you get in, mate? You have got 4 muddy socks on now, and I don't know what you're eating there. There is no telling, you little scavenger.